Greta Thunberg, in her comments to Congress yesterday, also talked about why it is right now that politicians feel like they can get away with doing nothing, but what their kids will one day think about them. And I want to take a look at this.
Either you do this, or you're going to have to start explain to your children and the most affected people why you are surrendering on the 1.5 degree target. Giving up without even trying. Well, what I'm here to say is that unlike you, my generation will not give up without a fight. And to be honest, I don't believe for a second that you will actually do this. The climate crisis doesn't exist in the public debate today. And since it doesn't really exist and the general level of awareness is so absurdly low, you will still get away with continuing to contribute to the destruction of present and future living conditions. And I know I'm not the one who's supposed to ask questions here, but there is something I really do wonder. How long do you honestly believe that people in power like you will get away with it? How long do you think you can continue to ignore the climate crisis, the global aspect of equity and historic emissions without being held accountable? You get away with it now, but sooner or later, people are going to realize what you have been doing all this time.
Very real. Like many of the politicians watching that are thinking, yes, I really do think that I can get away with it. Maybe on some level, like, oh, I like bunnies too. I wish we could do something. But she's being really naive, and the scientists are probably exaggerating the timeline. Someday we'll get around to it. I doubt many of them are honestly thinking, screw Miami and Manhattan, they can flood. But what they are doing in practice will result in those things, and they're clearly not scared. They're not scared in the short term that stopping the Green New Deal from being passed is going to hurt them electorally. They don't seem to be scared in the long term about the actual environmental consequences or the fact that they will be remembered by future generations as absolute traitors to the existence of our species. She seems to indicate at the end that a turning point is going to come. I don't know, Brett, do you feel like we're close to that turning point where the environmental conversation will be a big enough part of political discourse to actually wreck people's careers, to force them to change?
I mean, the only time that this happens is really in local politics. It's the pothole thing. Like they say all politics is local, and so it will. I mean, we look at the places that are affected first. And those we can go region by region, but like places with coastlines that are fragile, where the richest people are living in places where they would lose their homes, that will have a political effect. But will it have a political effect? What will end up happening is, rather than face the thing, those people also have typically have investments in things like big corporations, which would need to change their ways in order for tangible changes to happen. But when it comes to whether I'm gonna cast my vote for a politician or not, those politicians will identify, well, there are easier ways for me to make this voter happy than tangible climate change.
Yeah.
And some magical thing happens along the way where kids start out learning the right lessons and acting the right way. And then something happens somewhere in your life where you realize you get kids, you get a house, maybe you get specific responsibilities that are right here in front of you. And that makes it easier to ignore all that stuff. So if you're asking if I think that something will change from the age-old, intergenerational dispute where everybody makes the same complaints, that the young are too idealistic and unreasonable, and the old are too crotchety and conservative and have given up their idealism, I don't think that's gonna change. But hopefully we can find that equilibrium where we say, well, here's a practical thing that's really affecting your lives. I'm still gonna make the argument that we should remain idealistic and we should do these things that seem, from a values perspective and a legislative perspective, smart and good at the same time. But it's all about from a political standpoint, making those arguments and when you have the opportunity, delivering on those promises.
Yeah, and also making sure that people know about the fact that you've delivered. Like you were talking about, how one of the things that makes this difficult is that the crisis we're trying to solve is, at least in some ways, viewed as being very far off. But the benefits that could come from dealing with it don't have to be far off. Like we could be generating jobs in 6 months or in a year. Like we could be cutting, pollution and ending some of the needless lost lives due to air pollution every year. Like we could be getting those benefits very soon potentially, but we got to make sure that people actually know about them.
And one of the last point for me is like one of the main thinkers on the right who is against this kind of legislation made a huge admission, but a mistake revealing how totally stupid he is. And that was Ben Shapiro when he's like, listen, we don't need Green New Deal stuff. Like humans adapt. It's like, well, the Green New Deal is the adaptation. That's it. That's all we're saying. You say, oh, human beings will find a way to make their way out of all these things through ingenuity and,
that he doesn't support.
It's like, well, that's the thing. We just did. This is a list of all that stuff. Great idea, Ben. We're doing it. And it seems like the only reason you don't want to go along with it is because it was my idea on the left, because it was our idea. Fine, I don't care. It's your idea, Ben. Great idea. We should use ingenuity to make these changes. Great, I've got a 14-page list. And as soon as Marjorie Taylor Greene is done reading it in 6 months, maybe she can pass it to you.
Yeah. That reason also that he gets support from the rich and corporations and all that. But look, you talked about the frog in the pot and the turning up of the water as an analogy. Like the thing that Ben Shapiro is doing, there's another one of those. It's the guy that like it's literally about flooding. The guy who's on his roof because of the flooding or whatever, and like a boat comes, then a helicopter comes, and he keeps saying that God is going to save him. And when he gets to heaven, God's like, dude, I sent a boat and a helicopter. That is what's going on. We've got the ideas are already, we know everything we need to know about the science. We don't need to wait for some massive technological leap that might or might not come. We can start making common sense changes now. Ben Shapiro.
I love.
Anyway,
and
final thought.
The final thought is something that we should always remember when Ben Shapiro is lauded for making these great intellectual points. He said, well, I mean, what happens when the coastline rises? People just sell their houses and move inland. And then there's that great video that someone made where they just very slowly break a hole in the drywall and stick their head through and go, sell the houses to who, Ben? Aquaman.
Like, it's a classic. It's a classic. For more political news, breakdowns, interviews, stories of activism, and me trying my hardest to care about the occasional big celebrity news story, subscribe to our YouTube channel at youtube.com/The Damage Report. And you can ring the bell wherever it is so you don't miss anything.